Let the Spirit sound.
Allow our power friends. This is a real treat for all of us in so many different ways. It's as I was sitting there, I was thinking that what we're involved in is the exhibition of a public love affair. It's our dear hand of the cause of God, in love with all of us, and in love with this city, this area, this whole part of the world. And obviously, it's reciprocated by you being in love with him. Comfort is less than secondary. Health is non-existent. All of these things we see personified in this person that we so easily call Bill. To the children, he is their grandfather. To us, he is our friend. And sometimes it's difficult for us to remember that he is one of Baha'u'llah's hands of the cause of God.
Thank you, Mr. Sector. One day I wish I knew what that was all about. No matter. This looks big, but it goes fast. See, it's just nothing to it. It's like a Frisbee. Not what's on it, but I meant the other. And I want to get right down to business. You don't mind to have to look at this and every now and then look back and see if you're there. But you'll know even if I'm behind here, I'm with you on this. Because this evening, tonight, this is really very important and beautiful. And like everything, tonight and especially tomorrow, it's all about you and the wonder and greatness and magnificence of you and your part in the faith. I'm sure you will be really astonished and thrilled before we're through. I was when I was putting it together. Yes. So I want to get down to the real purpose of this session tonight right away. It's about racial unity. Race unity is in and racism is out the window. We know that. So we don't have to go into that in great details. But it's more important, the oneness of mankind to us in the American community, as those, remember the numbers that came down to 1,738. This thing on racial oneness is the same. It's all in this book, The Advent of Divine Justice by the Guardian, and in many of our other sacred writings from the Bab Baha'u'llah Abdul-Baha. And that's mostly what I'm going to talk about tonight because of its significance. From the National Spiritual Assembly and beyond them, the Universal House of Justice. They are telling us what we must do to really win a tremendous victory for the faith. We started, and we love the concept we have, the Baha'is, of race unity. But it's something far more than that the House of Justice and the National Assembly is called. And the thing about it that is wonderful, frightening, but joyous at the same time, is that until the American Baha'i community rises up like a lion to show what they stand for in the field of racial unity, it will never happen in the world. Never. That's clear from our writings. There is never going to be racial unity and the oneness of mankind on this planet until we, the Baha'is, do it. Nobody else can do it except us. And that's a big challenge, but now is the time. The House of Justice has said now is the time to bring it into being. And the National Assembly, you know, they wrote this marvelous pamphlet. I have two different colors of the same thing. a vision of race unity, America's most challenging issue, and always has been ever since this book of the Guardians, Evident Divine Justice, came out. And there are hundreds of thousands of these now, all over the world. Probably more than that, maybe coming closer to 1 million, but hundreds of thousands have been sent to the leaders of men and to people interested in this from a personal standpoint. And it's causing quite an impact out there in the world. And that's part of what I want to share with you tonight. None of that was on here, but I think it was a lot better than what I put down here, actually. But we're doing this under the guidance of Baha'u'llah, the Supreme Redeemer of men, so we've got to believe it. He's made it clear, as has Abdul-Baha and the Beloved Guardian and the House of Justice, there is no other hope for mankind to establish the oneness of mankind except us, the Baha'i. And that means especially those of you in this room, in this country, as it says, and you'll hear tomorrow, chosen by God to carry out these wonderful missions, and we can do it. So, yeah, I'm finished with that, I think. You don't mind if I just throw it down there? It's all right. We'll pick it up later. But the thing is, time for us to know that we're miles ahead. I mean, miles ahead of the whole planet in this thing about racial oneness. We're already doing it in many countries all over the world, as you know, but not nearly enough as we should. We're just doing it because we have the writings about it, and we sound beautiful, and whenever we tell anybody who's involved in the racial oneness in the world, they're astonished, and they say, hey, that's really great. Why aren't you doing more about it? And of course, they're right to say that, too, because we're not doing what we really should be. Because we're ready, we really are, as Baha'is, to die for this principle of the oneness of mankind. And I mean ready to die for it, for the people of other colors. And I'm saying here, not only black, all colors. That's how we feel about all the colors of the world. And I'm here tonight to try to wake us up a bit on the subject. I had to wake myself up first, you know, when I read all of that. And I said, I'm a son of a gun, you know. I knew all this was wonderful, but I didn't know they were counting on us to really establish it throughout the world, you know. And nobody else can, as we'll see. That's why we need, as the Guardian said, hundreds of thousands, millions of new believers. He said, drown your troubles in an ocean of new believers. If you want to establish the oneness of mankind, you must have thousands of new believers. So the impact of that will begin to touch the hearts of people everywhere, and they'll see there's no place else to turn to it for that solution but to us. So that's why we have to get on with our real work, the oneness of mankind. And that's one thing that's really worth dying for, isn't it? When you look at the world and all of the troubles that are going on everywhere. And these pamphlets, which is nice, are beginning to circle the whole world. And there are Baha'is, of course, out there who have spent their lives and fortune already on these subjects. But we haven't had the concept of the oneness of doing it throughout the entire planet. And we have to become quite a different people, Baha'u'llah has said. Quite a different people than we've been. And we have to open our hearts. We've done that. We have to open our minds with this special sweetness. But we must also open our homes in a different way than we've done before. It's all in writing. Mouthpiece of God, Baha'u'llah said to go out and do it. And don't talk about it. Not only at home, in our own communities where it's easy, but out in the world where it's very difficult and where people they don't like each other at all. I had a song I was going to bring, but it didn't seem really quite suited to the magnitude and the greatness of the subject. And I can't remember the quartet of young boys who sang it, but is that the one where everybody hates everybody? You know, the Irish don't like the Dutch, and the Serbs don't like the Croats, and the Turks don't like the Greeks, and the fellow at the end says, and I don't like anybody very much. But I thought I'd leave that out because it's true. We can see that in all the papers, and we know that. So what we need is leadership to become what Baha'u'llah wants us to become. And so that it's obvious to the whole world who we are and what we stand for, so that there's no prejudice anywhere in our Baha'i communities. That's why I brought along this book filled with marvelous things like that that will help us in our work. And I thought first, just to show you how silly all this concept of trouble is over the matter of race and color, show you how foolish it is, I've asked for these helpers to come up and help me to show you that. And they're there someplace, I believe. Are they ready down there? Do you know where they are? Yes, here they come. Please come up and stand right behind me. And I want you to come in the order. I'd like to have Ross Gritz come first. And he'll be here, right up in here. And he'll be the first one. And then Helen Fong will come second. And then George Halaholo will come third. And Sharaf Bolt will come fourth. Did you get those numbers in the right order? You want to hear them again? Ross Gritz first over here. Come in close, all four of you, as close to me as you can get. And then Helen Fong. Right, Ross?
I'm Ross.
Helen. And then next comes George Halaholo. He's right behind me. All right, isn't that marvelous? And Sharaf Bolt. Are you right there too, Sharaf? Now, what I'm here to show you, let me get them out here again so I can. That's the kind of printing I like. I can see that even with my laser eyes, see? Ross Gritz, a representative of the American Indian and of the red race. But you'll see that, Ross, would you lean down by this card? He's not red at all, is he? No, right? Okay, thank you, Ross. And now a very sweet young lady, Helen Fong, Chinese. But she's not yellow at all, is she, really? It's not true, right? And then we have representing George Halaholo.
I'm brown.
But he's not brown. He's closer, but he's not brown, right? And then look all of the trouble that has caused. And let's see, then it comes Sharaf Bolt. Are you over here too far? Maybe? Come on over here and show him you're not black. Right? All right. And I'm sure you'll agree I'm not white. Right? Thank you. That's it. That represents the 5 races of mankind. Isn't that marvelous? Nobody's red, nobody's brown, nobody's white, nobody's black, nobody's yellow. And then look at all the trouble it has caused. I wanted to tell you another thing about our faith that we can talk about and say it's true. All over the planet, we have local assemblies, national assemblies that are from the red race. Just think of that. And from the yellow race, local assemblies, national assemblies, by the hundreds and more. We have them, Baha'is, everywhere. And from the brown race, and from the black race, and from the white race. We have them. So you see, that's why I said we were head and shoulders ahead of the rest of the world. Leaps, giant strides ahead of all of them. For we have important institutions, not just people from all the 5 races of mankind all over the world. Institutions that are living and growing, building schools, doing all of the things to bring mankind together and doing it. Nobody in the world, no other group, political, whatever it would be, or religious, is doing that. And that's why the beloved guardian, Abdul-Baha before him, and Baha'u'llah and the Bab, said, we are the ones that must do it, and we can do it. Nobody else has got a chance like that. So think of just how wonderful and how fast we have developed. I talked about that, pamphlets, before. I made a note here for you to remember in the world of music that the Baha'is were among the first in music long, long ago to point out that it took both the black and the white keys to play the Star-Spangled Banner. Ages ago, it did. And more than that, we have even now choruses and choirs all over the world who are singing that beautiful Baha'i song, "Good neighbors come in all colors, red, yellow, brown, black, and white." If you haven't heard it, you should try to get your chorus, if you have one, to learn to sing it. Good neighbors come in all colors. And we see in the show how those colors, how important they are and how beautiful they are. So that's quite exciting. See how fast these are going? Isn't that nice? I do lose you a little bit when I look, but you're there, still there, I see. Anyway, that's not enough, what's happening and what we're doing. Not nearly enough for Baha'u'llah, the supreme manifestation of God. There is no one except the Baha'is who can do this, establish the oneness of mankind. Think about it. More and more. I mean, after all, there isn't anyway, because he's a supreme redeemer of men, isn't he? And he's the fulfillment of all the religions of the past. All of them fulfilled their prophecies and brought all of this world to a consummation of the oneness of mankind and a world of peace. Who else is ever going to do it? Nobody but you. But you have to realize that is your job, have to be exciting, and that's why these pins are important. 9,000 new believers for Rizwan this year, not a puny less than 2,000. With the Holy Year coming, the tribute to Baha'u'llah, and all the other things I won't go into again tonight. Before we leave this weekend, be sure you go get yourself a whole pocket full of those pins, and send them to your relatives, Baha'i relatives, wherever they are. Tell them what's happening. There'll soon be an article in the American Baha'i and in the Feast Letter, all talking about Think 9,000. You have to have a theme. You have to have something that looks good, makes you excited, and that's what this pin is all about. The 5 is the number of the Bab, 9 is the number of Baha'u'llah, but it doesn't add up to 14. This year, it adds up to 9,000 at Rizwan. Part of what we're doing also with the oneness of mankind. Hey, that's pretty good, but I don't think I have time to do all of that part. Isn't that a shame? But someone, I felt, and I thought it was my job because I was just as shocked and surprised as you were by all of this. Somebody had to awaken the sleeping giant. You know, that's what the Guardian always said. When the Baha'is were awakened, they did wonderful things, but they spent pretty long periods slumbering. And he said that when I was on pilgrimage, and at that moment, there wasn't anybody else on pilgrimage but me. And I couldn't look over and say, "Hey, Dick Kroger, did you hear what the Guardian said? I hope you're taking that to heart." I was the only one there. And I was glad when new pilgrims came. It helped, see. Well, that's happening now all over the planet, that we're beginning to realize who we are and how important we are. But until we as Baha'is rise up like lions to win this victory of the oneness of mankind, it is never going to be won. Believe it. The Bab said so, Baha'u'llah said so, Abdul Baha said so, Shoghi Effendi said so, the Universal House of Justice said so, and probably the Supreme Concourse is hollering at us all the time, "Hey, Bill, get a move on down there," you know. And I hear that, you know. And I do get a move on, but not quite as fast as I should, probably. But all of us are eager to get caught up in the wonderful things that are happening behind the Iron Curtain country. Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria. I mean, it's all a part of something very wonderful that's going on. Part of the almost beginning to bring in the great wave we've heard of called the major plan of God. This is the minor plan, of course, of God. But by winning this goal of the oneness of mankind, we can release the most exciting part of the minor, glorious minor plan of God, because that'll be all over the world. And until we do it, there'll never be the day when our fellow citizens will have that world we talked about, the kingdom of God on earth. The Master said that the Lord's Prayer of Christ was not only a prophecy, not only a prayer, but a prophecy. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Let me show you, for example, what I mean. This is only my own limited travels and understanding. But I went to Cyprus. I was on my way to Lebanon, stopped in Cyprus, where the Turks and the Greeks, are having all these troubles. They hate each other. They can't get along at all. But our local assembly in that country, in the nearby towns of that country, they have, in Cyprus, they have Turks and Greeks working together with the Baha'is on local assemblies, loving each other. Really loving each other, while the rest of the country, they are fighting and hiding and having these battles and killing each other. But we showed them, and they said it couldn't be done. No use to tell us that here in Cyprus it can't be done. It is being done by Baha'is. Marguerite and I went to Lebanon, to Beirut, the capital city, to meet the Baha'i community. And we went out for some yogurt and a few apples and things, like traveling Baha'is will do before they meet the other Baha'is, the first night. And when we came back, there were television stations, and with the cars with the lights and everything out in front of the door. And there's only one way to get into the hotel. It was right up those steps. And so we came in, and we looked pretty scruffy, to be honest with you. I was holding the yogurt, I think, and Marguerite was holding the grapefruit and stuff, with the kind of bags, that in net, and you could see everything. And we weren't going to set the whole place on fire with our appearance, because up the steps, the red carpet was out now, all the way down the steps and out into the street. And the soldiers, Army and Navy, were there with their swords crossed above us. And we had to walk right up through that. And I said to Marguerite, boy, these Baha'is here in Lebanon really lay it out for you when you come to visit, They were awaiting the arrival of Emperor Haile Selassie. And neither Marguerite nor I was Selassie, But we walked up, and when we got to the top, they corralled us and said, where were we coming from? And we told them we had a room up on the 4th floor. They went up with us and checked over everything in the room, and then they saw the Baha'i books, and they knew that we weren't assassins or anything. So they went back down to wait for the emperor. Marguerite and I stayed up there, and we went out on the porch and looked right down where Emperor Haile Selassie's limousine came. And they went to one side to get him, and he slid to this side. And then when he saw they were over there, he slid back there, and they came here. It was a comedy of errors, but lovely and very beautiful and well done. And finally he came out. We could have sat right where we were in our balcony and dropped our yogurt right on top of him. The point is, nobody said anything to us at all. But we felt pretty big walking up under those cross swords, you see. Now, the point of that whole story is that the Arabs were killing the Jews, and the Jews, the Christians, and all of them. I don't have to tell you, they're hostages that have been waiting for years to get released from different groups. And we were coming to meet a local assembly. And on that assembly, there were Arabs, there were Jews, there were Christians with the Baha'is, working together, loving each other. Really loving each other. They couldn't bear the wonder of Baha'u'llah, who had changed their hearts. And we had been told by the Arabs, the Jews, and the Christians not to try to do this kind of work there. It couldn't be done with these people. They would always be bitter enemies, but we had changed them, and we had done it. And we're doing it in Africa with the black and the white in the southern part of the United States. I could sit here and take a long list, but you've got the point already. We are doing what the world said couldn't be done. all because of the love of Baha'u'llah and this love affair we have with each other, whatever skin color we are. And that's what we're going to do to the world, too, with these great numbers of new believers. Baha'u'llah and the Bab, not 14, 9,000. And that's why we have this theme. Think, 9,000 for the Rizwan of this year. None of that's here, but that was a lot better than what I put down here. I can see that. In this pamphlet, your National Spiritual Assembly, of whom we've had a representative here tonight, and they have been so kind and loving to me in helping me on this trip. Always, all my Baha'i life, when I'm in America, they do that, and it's really great. This pamphlet, hundreds of thousands everywhere, and there will be more and more and more, and the world will gradually come to see what this stands for. This statement is wonderful, and the House of Justice is hoping that America, the United States, chosen by God to win all of these great victories, will make this a reality, and we can. That's the point. You know, we can get up and we go home and say, gee, that was wonderful, but could that possibly be true? No, not unless we rise up to teach. And they're going to see all of this, and they're going to be moved by it. And they will see all over the world, like in Lebanon and Cyprus from our personal experience, and in South Africa, what we have done and what we can do, and what nobody else on the face of the earth can do but these 5 races of mankind in which we have put down such deep roots, in which, you know, it's moving fast now. I guess from after reading the pamphlet, you know, the One Peace pamphlet, I have a copy of that? Yes, Promise of World Peace. I think it's 3 or 4 million it said in there. Since then, we've had another 1 or 2, maybe around 6 or 7 million people. And as we sit here, hundreds of more. And as you get out your pins and carry them around and see that every one of your Baha'i friends and relatives have one, we're going to go to 7, 8, 9, 10 million. By the thousands, until we are a unity for the oneness of mankind, a powerhouse under the supreme manifestation of God, greater than anything the world has ever seen. And then you will see all of these things we've talked about begin to come true. And that's just a wonderful thing that we're facing. And it's true. I mean, it isn't a dream. It's actually getting like that every day of our lives. And it's the only way it can be done. The only way. Everything, of course, that's happening everywhere in the world is wonderful, vital, and we must encourage and admire it, whether it is our work or somebody else's. Praise it. But the final leadership will have to come from Baha'u'llah. You know that. The promised one of all religions, who fulfilled the promises and prophecies of all the religions of the past. The blessed beauty, his words say, and this is sacred writings of our faith, we are indeed worthy of being the first to build the tabernacle of the most great peace. And especially the writings proclaim that the oneness of mankind, this is all a quote now, the oneness of the mankind and our beliefs in it, in the spiritual power of our faith, has equipped and empowered us to accomplish that which will adorn the pages of history, to become the envy of the world and blessed in both the East and the West. Every Baha'i in this room, every Baha'i in the world, man, woman, youth, and child must do this with the oneness of mankind. And the Guardian made it clear, don't just tell them that you believe in these things, show them that you believe in these things. So whenever they're among you with other races, they can see what the Baha'is stand for, the thing that the world is dying for, and the things, all of the things that are happening because of the lack of it. If you look at the troubles of the world and the teachings of the faith, you would see that all of the things they're suffering from are the things Baha'u'llah taught us and taught the world 100 years ago. Drugs that weaken the body and the soul and destroy people. Alcoholism that poisons the brain. And all of these things. He told us nearly a century ago in most all of these how to prevent it before it got started. And when it got started, how to stop it and how to change it and to turn this world into the world that Almighty God created, the oneness of mankind. All of those things and more. I won't go into all the rest of them. But he said that we were equipped and empowered to accomplish that, which will adorn the pages of history and make us the envy of the world. And we will become blessed in both the East and the West. And not just to say it, but to do it and show the world what it really means. I didn't mean to say that there. I didn't know how that got there, really. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You know it's true. You know all of the words that are not mine. My words are nothing. They're ashes. The only words I have to give to you have been these quotations about your magnificence and greatness from the Bab Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, the beloved guardian, and the universal house of justice. So why is all this so important? Because you are the sole redeemers and saviors of your fellow man. Believe that in your heart. There is no one is going to bring about this world except you, the Baha'is, all of us, working together in every phase of life. Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, and the beloved guardian have told us that time after time and told us to believe it, never to doubt it. You're unique in the world. There are no other people like you in the world but the Baha'is. No wonder we're the hope of the world. You know, you got these days, with all the troubles there are, you can't walk down Elm Street or whatever the street is and see a house on fire through the big front window and a man and his wife and 2 children asleep on the couch and the whole wall in flames. You can't go by there as a Baha'i and just look in and say, isn't that too bad? I do hope they'll wake up before there's any real trouble. And they'll be cremated in no time the way they're going. You've got to go up there and pound on the door and say, wake up, my God, your house is on fire. And that's what's happening to the houses of the world, not only civil, but religious as well. So that's what we have to do. We know who we are, and we know what we must do. In all the world of mankind, the hopes of the earth are on you, and we'll come to know it more and more with every day that passes. It's true. Bowlknockers to the world, you know. I remember that when I was first a Baha'i, and I told them about the experiment I always used to see. Professor in biology had a big bowl of water, and he would put a live frog in there and put a candle underneath it so it would just warm the water up. And the frog didn't know that, and he swam around happy, and there's nice cool water and everything, you know. But the longer he stayed in there, the warmer it got, until finally it was getting very hot. And you could see that if he didn't do something about it, he's going to be just cooked in there, because now he's swimming like this. I mean, all that excitement is gone. And finally, it's quite apparent if somebody doesn't rescue him, he won't be able to make it. That's the way the world is. The people have come into that with drugs and alcohol and all the other things I won't waste the time talking about. They have become not like this, you know, but like that. But right up until the last minute, if you knock on the bowl, the frog will jump out. And that's what we are. We're the Bowlknockers to the world. Really, we are, and we have to get those people out of there. I talked that with that little talk on at Pasadena one time, and I used the little balsa wood bowl they sent me from Tokyo, some Baha'i friends. I had it sitting in the bowl, and then I had the candle underneath it. These 3 little kids came by, right? One of them saw that, and he saw that there was a frog in there, And that bowl was going on there. And he came back and he hollered at the bowl, "Get out of there, you darn fool! Those Bahiles will boil you if you don't." He didn't know that we were bowl knockers to the world. But we are, beloved friends. Anyway, you still out there? Yes, I see you. That's good, because I wanted to say something to every one of you. I do. Really. I love you. I love you intensely for what you will do for your fellow man. And if you think this has been kind of challenging, this idea of the oneness of mankind, wait until tomorrow. In the meantime, think 9,000, right? Get out those pins to all your relatives and friends, and let's start the ball rolling. And try to get plenty of rest for tomorrow, because we're going to have some fun tomorrow. But not too much rest, right? I mean, you have to call your Baha'i friends on the phone. Those who are not here, see that they're here tomorrow, and we get them, put them in all the rooms. They should be here, because tomorrow is going to be one of our best exciting days about the magnificence and greatness of you. And every Baha'i should know that, you know. If you've been teaching certain people, they don't have to be Baha'i. If they're really interested, we don't want just head nodders who know nothing. But if you've been teaching somebody and you think they're interested, bring them. Maybe they'll want to sign their declaration card while they're here. You don't know, and we'll have hugs and kisses and hold the whole thing up until we're ready to go with them. Anyway, that's what we'd like. All right, that's there. Oh my goodness, I'm coming down. The stack's getting thin there all the time. The Bab, you know, was the herald and the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, the founder of our faith. The Bab was more by far, we know that. He was not only a messenger and forerunner of Baha'u'llah, but he was a prophet in his own right, the Bab. And it says in the world order of Baha'u'llah, and I believe in the gleanings too, that that's the single most important feature of our entire faith. The fact that the Bab was not only a forerunner, but a prophet in his own right. Well, of course it is. Anybody knows that. I mean, 2 messengers of God in quick succession. That was foretold in all the holy books of the past. It's unique, of course. And therefore, it would have to be the most distinguishing thing of all. And we have to believe how wonderful our faith is and why it's never seen its like. The world has never seen its like. And so we can, in the beginning of our teaching work, bring in 9,000 believers. Once it starts, and you never know when it's going to start, send out your Asian teachers among the Asian community and the Hispanics. Wherever, you never know it'll start, and once it starts, maybe you'll find the 9,000 all of a sudden in one of these places. But we have to have to believe it's done. I'm going to read a passage out of this book. I wrote this book. It's called Release the Sun. I stole it all from the secret writings. That's why I had a book called The Thief in the Night, I think. The truth is, I'm a thief in the day and the night. That's where I get all my material. But I put down about this book. Of course, my books are meaningless, actually. I mean, they have nothing to do with like the writings of the Bab and Baha'u'llah and Abdul-Baha and Shoghi Effendi and the Universal House of Justice. I mean, those are the sacred writings, and we have many wonderful scholars and writers that my books are like ashes compared to that. But my books were written because I worked in radio and television and in sports, and I wrote like a man in the street. I wrote down what I'd like to hear if I were a Baha'i, and so sometimes they're useful for that. But I want to read this passage from this book, Release the Sun. The words that the Bab spoke to Mullah Hussein the very first night of our faith. And from his book, the Qayyum al-Azma, He Who Will Arise. On the very first evening, Mullah Hussein came in and met the Bab, and the Bab began to talk to him. And these were some of the words that he said. And you'll find when you use these words or any of the other teachings for the first time, that's how people are going to react. This is the sacred word, the holy word of God, and it will do something to the hearts, and it'll be a wonderful change. It changed and transformed Mullah Hussein, he said. Almost his very first words were that he was transfigured by it. So no wonder transformation is so important. It began the very first night anybody in the world heard the message of the Bab, and that was Mullah Hussein. So I brought along that passage so that I could share it with you. It's from that book, Release the Sun, but it's also in the Dawnbreakers. That's the real place. But these are Mullah Hussein's own words about that experience. Imagine such a thing, 2 hours, 11 minutes after sunset, on the 22nd of May in 1944. Mullah Hussein is hearing these words for the first time, and so is all of mankind. And Mullah Hussein said, I sat enraptured by the magic of his voice and the sweeping force of his teachings. I was blinded by the dazzling splendor of this new world. I was overwhelmed by his crushing force, and predominant among all my emotions was a sense of gladness and strength which seemed to have transfigured me. Transformed. Isn't that wonderful? How feeble and impotent, how dejected and timid I had felt previously. Then I could neither write nor walk, so tremulous were my hands and feet. And now the knowledge of his words had galvanized my being. I felt possessed of such courage and power that were the world, the whole world, and all its peoples and its rulers to rise up against me, I would alone and undaunted withstand their onslaught. The universe seemed to be but a handful of dust in my grasp. I seemed to be the voice of the angel Gabriel personified, calling aloft unto all mankind, awake, awake, for lo, the morning light has broken. Arise, for his cause is made manifest to the world. The portal of his grace is open wide. Enter therein, O peoples of the world. For he who is your promised one is come, the promised one of all the religious peoples in time. What a moment that must have been for Mullah Hussein. And whenever he told that soul-saving story about this life-bringing news to the world for the first time, things happened. And before he left that night, the Bab said, this night, this is what the Bab told Mullah Hussein, this night, this very hour, will in days to come be celebrated as one of the greatest and most significant of all festivals. Well, it has already become that, hasn't it? Now, last declaration of the Bab, it was all over the world. All over the world, hundreds of thousands of places, and it will be more and more until it will be the greatest and most significant of all the festivals. Nobody can estimate even now the number of where that festival will be held. Hundreds of thousands and thousands, and that's how your faith is growing, and it will grow greater and greater and more, and all of these wonders will come to pass. Well, I wanted to finish. I'm coming almost to the end now, and that's pretty good. It's only 20 minutes to 9, but you know what a powerful story this has been. And I wanted to say something lighthearted, although it's important, what the Guardian told us we should do. It's what he told me I should do when I was on pilgrimage, and I think I'd pass his advice on to you, you know. One night he was talking about George Townsend, the greatest writer in the West, and the Irish believers and their qualities. And Amatul Baha Rohia Khanum pointed at me. I was seated right across the table from him that night. And she said, beloved Guardian, you're looking at one of the Irish believers. Bill is Irish. His great-grandfather came from Court McSherry Bay in one or two other places in Ireland. And he looked at me carefully, Whenever he looked at me, I knew he was on to me. And no matter what I was saying, he knew the answer, and it was no, you know. But he looked at me and he said, yes, but he has a Spanish complexion. And he has Italian eyes. And he has a French chin. So I smiled and I said, beloved guardian, also sometimes I have been mistaken for Dr. Escazade, Dr. Milani. We both had a tan gabardine suit at Greenacre that year. Both were a little bald-headed and had a nice mustache and did look quite a bit alike. So I said, I must look something like a Persian man, and the beloved guardian smiled. And I knew in his eyes the thing was no, right, the answer. But I hadn't even asked the question yet. So I said, do I look enough like a Persian man to go with you up to the shrine of the Bab when you talk only to the Persian men? And he looked at me and smiled and said, there are no bargains in the cause of God. Right? And I went to, I said, is it true in the Epistle to the Son of the Wolf? This was later another night. Is it true in the Epistle to the Son of the Wolf when it says in there, where you say in there, at least translating the words of the Blessed Beauty, that a month at Akka is worth 1,000 years elsewhere? And he looked at me again. I knew it was no, right? But he hadn't said anything, but he's looking me right in the eye. And he said, yes, that is true. I said, well, if you think it would be equitable and fair, and I gave you, would you give me a month at Akka if I gave you 1,000 years service elsewhere? And he smiled at me and he said, there are no bargains in the cause of God. And when I came back from the mansion, my heart was so full of everything that had happened. I'm saying it now and sitting here and being able to withstand it, but to have been in his presence and to go to all of these places. Even now when I lay back with my head in the pillow and look at the ceiling, my heart is so full that I still weep. And he said to me, how did you enjoy your visit to the mansion and to the shrine of Baha'u'llah? I said to him, beloved guardian, please don't be inspirational tonight. If you are, I won't be able to bear it and I'll just explode and vanish right before your eyes. And he said, with that wonderful smile, no, no, no. He said, you mustn't explode here. Don't explode here. We don't need it here. He said, wait until you get back to Africa and explode there. And that, beloved friends, I've been trying to do ever since. Sometimes I don't seem to have enough powder and it's kind of a... And sometimes it's wonderful, but always it's generated by his words. And that's what I suggest you do in all the love and the joy of being together. Don't explode here. Wait until you get home, wherever you're from. Take a look at that. Think 9,000 and explode there. And we will change the face of the world. Well, beloved friends, we have a prayer for you somewhere. We're going to put it out along the edge, but don't take yours right away. We have a prayer for everybody, a victory prayer for the Think 9,000 from the writings of Abdul-Baha, from page 5 of his book, Selections from the Writings of Abdul-Baha, because now it's time to retire until tomorrow. Sleep, beloved, well, beloved friends. So this is our closing prayer. O God, my God, I beg of thee by thy streaming clouds of bounty, raining down gifts upon thy loved ones, cause them to gain the victory through the battalions of thy might that overpowereth all things, and reinforce them with a great fighting host from out of the concourse on high. Good night. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Beloved friends, and you are beloved friends, all of you. Richard, bring me the photograph of the beloved guardian, will you? When he was a little boy. Breaks my heart every time I see this. This comes from a shelf right in front of my desk where I work. And even though I'm only one of his remnants, he likes to keep an eye on me and make sure what's happening. I wanted to read from the back of this. This is what the master said. He was speaking of a tablet from Baha'u'llah at the marriage, the master's marriage, and he said, as a result of the union of these two sacred beings, a third countenance will appear, so that the meaning of the verse would be fulfilled. We dignify both by the third. And the third, of course, was the countenance of the beloved guardian. And in the World Order of Baha'u'llah on page 150, Abdul-Baha says about Shoghi Effendi, to their questions as to whether there would be any person to whom all the Baha'is would be called upon to turn after his ascension, he, Abdul-Baha, made the following reply, quote, as to the question you have asked, know verily that this is a well-guarded secret. It is given as a gem concealed within its shell. That it will be revealed is predestined. The time will come when the light will appear, when its evidence will be made manifest, and its secrets will be unveiled. And lastly, Abdul-Baha on a tablet in volume 2, page 486. This was upon the birth of Shoghi Effendi. The master said, verily that infant is born and exists, Shoghi Effendi, and there will appear from his cause a wonder which thou wilt hear of in the future. Thou shalt see him with the most perfect form, most great gift, most complete perfection, most great power and strongest might. His face glisteneth, it glisteneth a glistening, whereby the horizons all are illumined. Therefore, forget not this account as long as thou art living. For as much as there shall be signs for it in the passing centuries and ages. Isn't that beautiful? What a lovely sight that is, really. It breaks my heart every time I look at it. And I just put it to wherever is a nice place over there. I put it up there because later on I'm going to show you a chart from the beloved guardian to all of us. Not in centuries and ages, and I won't go into the details of it now, but in the 70 years of his mission before he left us, all of these things he brought into being of the administrative order of the Blessed Beauty. And if we have all of this, imagine in a 70-year mission, and the ages and centuries haven't even started yet. You can see immediately why you are so important and why you will conquer the whole world. Oneness of mankind, thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of believers. because this he has already given to us as a gift and will continue to shower his love upon us in those ages. This time a little harder work for you, but I want to have the picture of the master, if you will, please. Chairman of the board, right? Spiritual. I don't have him up in my room, my office. I have him out in the living room. I see him every day, but I don't like to have him have his eye on me too closely, you know. I want to read this. I brought it over here so I could read something from the back of it. You have been very kind and forgiving and charitable to allow me to use my big notes, and yes, you're still there. I knew you would be. And my magnifying glass. Won't it be forever, I hope. But this is what the Master said about you and about this faith of ours. He says, the cause we have proclaimed is such as no pen can ever describe, nor can any mind conceive its greatness. I testify before God to the greatness, the inconceivable greatness of this revelation. Again and again have we in most of our tablets borne witness to this truth, that mankind may be raised from its heedlessness. In this most mighty revelation, all the dispensations of the past have obtained their highest, their final consummation. That which hath been made manifest in this preeminent, this most exalted revelation stands unparalleled in the annals of the past, nor will future ages ever witness its like again. How magnificent. Do you put that back up on the easel for me, Dick? He doesn't like it if I call him Richard. He thinks that's too formal, you know. Well, beloved friends, that's a start. And if this is the beginning of our Sunday, we can only imagine what the end is going to be, right? This is another one of our challenges I mentioned to you. I mentioned it Saturday afternoon when we started. And the Universal House of Justice says that this challenge is far greater than any of the challenges we face at this particular moment. Of course, we'd all like to be basking in the breathtaking victories behind the Iron Curtain, thrilling to new believers in the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Indonesia, and all of them. But this challenge that we're talking about here on Sunday surpasses every one of them. And we can change the whole face of humanity. Baha'u'llah says, and the Master says, and Shoghi Effendi says, that there is nothing we cannot do if we arise together in love to accomplish it. And nothing compared to this particular challenge that is ours on this day. You don't mind I explained Saturday. If you weren't here then, I'm still having laser treatments on my eyes, and you disappear entirely, you see, if I do that. So I don't want that. I got them back on. You look beautiful in this. I feel a great warmth and love coming up this way. And I hope as we go along, I'll be able to send some of that warm and tender love back to you. The Universal House of Justice, in their addendum to the message sent by our convention, they replied and told every one of us that our American destiny could not be achieved until every last word of Abdu'l-Baha's prophecies about us in the United States were fulfilled to the last word. And that's why I'm here, of course. And especially Baha'u'llah's call to the West. And as I always say, those are quotation marks. And whenever you hear me say the West, those quotation marks are there. because Baha'u'llah, the Master and the Guardian, wrote about us in the United States and all put those around the message. It was so great, more than mankind had ever seen before for a religion. So, I think I'll just hand yours to you and you can drop them a little easier. Thank you. What would I do without Dick? Richard. So now I'd like to have you hear the praises and the glories of the West. The American Baha'i community in particular. It's the heart of all I'm going to say this morning. Because the real heart of it is you. And before we get to the end, you will see the magnificence and the greatness of who you are. And your hearts will just be exalted and uplifted. Shoghi Effendi in God Passes By, page 253, tells us about that auspicious event. That's a quote. All a quote about the West. An event, Shoghi Effendi says, that posterity will come to recognize as one of the greatest triumphs of his, Abdu'l-Baha's ministry, his entire ministry. The greatest of anything he did in the world or any place else happened here in your country and mine in the United States of America. The West, the USA, Shoghi Effendi says, what happened here was when the masters rose to the zenith of his mission because, of course, the covenant of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah in Adrianople to the kings and rulers of the world. Abdu'l-Baha in America, especially the city of New York, where we have that great centenary coming up in the following year. And that was when he named New York City in our country as the city of the covenant. So, I wanted to say a little more about all of the Baha'is in this room. Wouldn't you, as I would, like to be sure that you play your important part, one that is not even given to you, not only given to you as a gift, but one which can change the hearts of mankind, and this world will become, as we see in our ringstone, when the kingdom of God will be on earth as it does in heaven. We will do that. We will do that. It's a promise in our writings. And that's why we're called upon to arise and make possible this global, everlasting victory. That was pretty good language. I didn't think I wrote that. I must have stolen that someplace. That's what I do with most of my things. That's why I wrote that book called A Thief in the Night. One of the boys, when I was on my way in London to the Royal Albert Hall, he came up and he kept looking at me and kept looking at me. And I had just completed another book with all of the teachings of the master in it. And he looked at me and finally he said, "Are you the thief in the night, man?" And I told him honestly, "No, I'm the thief in the day in the night, man." And we got to be quite good friends. Anyway, it says in here that this is a quote too, from page 253 also, God Passes By. The beloved guardian often cited Baha'u'llah and cited the master, you know, in his writings. And this quote says, "The great republic of the West, above all the other countries of the Occident, the West, was singled out to be the first recipient of God's inestimable blessings and to become the chief agent in the transmission to so many of her sister nations throughout the 5 continents of the earth." End of quotation. The USA, the West, us, you, myself, happily included, and so grateful for that. We were chosen, this is a quote, the United States was chosen by God. Chosen by God. For everybody in this room who's from this country, if you are from Bulgaria, you were chosen little too, though, so don't feel badly, man. But this is our responsibility, and this is why we have to rise up in this wonderful way. The Bab, you know, in the very first night when he talked to Mullah Hussein, the Gayyum al-Azma, he who will arise, in that first book he said, he addressed the peoples of the West. Imagine that. In the very first breath of our faith, he addressed the peoples of the West and told us to issue forth from our cities to aid God and become his brothers and sisters in the one indivisible religion of God. All the quotes, all about us, all about the United States of America, chosen by God for this destiny we hold in the palm of our hands. And that's why today, this morning, I've come to talk about that so that we won't be shocked, but we'll be overjoyed that we were finally awakened to our great task. It's a burden, but it's a joy. I remember, you know, when the Master was here, Abdul-Baha, and someone was riding with him in a car, taking him to his 11th meeting that day. Imagine. And he looked very tired and very weary, and as no doubt he was. But he had still more to go. And someone put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Beloved Master, you're so tired. Couldn't you just for a moment lay down your burden and take some rest?" And the Master smiled at him and became much straighter, and he said, "Well, whenever I would like to lay down my burden and rest, I hear the voice of my Father on high saying, 'March, march, march.' So I rise up and I march, and the rest will have to come later." I'm sure he was thinking of some other kingdom way beyond the next world, right? On and on go the wonders of the West, given to us by Baha'u'llah, Abdul-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi, making all the explanations clearer. Abdul-Baha declares, summarizing the glories and blessings of the West. This is also a quote. He says, "The day is approaching when ye shall witness how, through the splendor of the faith of Baha'u'llah, the West will have replaced the East." Imagine that. Radiating the light of divine guidance to the entire world. See, that's the responsibility that we have. No wonder we march and march and march. The light of the manifestation of God came across the earth, and it landed with its great power in the United States of America first, and we became the ones who had to carry all of this to the planet. And that's why it is so important that we not have a failure on the home front. One, I'm sure that we were not aware of. And we will talk about these charts a little later on, and you will be overwhelmed, I think, by the wonder and the joy of all of it. I always look in the back, you know, because every now and then I say over and I write some of the best stuff back here. And if I'm not careful, I miss it. These glasses for the laser treatment are all right, but when you're an Irishman sitting here with tears in your eyes all of the time, you can't see what's on either side of it, and you have to be careful. I should wipe my eyes more often, but I don't want to look like, you know, that I'm not totally in control of this. And I'm not, I'll tell you that. Well, that's why our situation today has become so devastatingly serious, a real crisis. But I figured we'll just sit here like we did for a few moments on Saturday and look it squarely in the eye, right? And see why such a failure on our part to make the home front raised up with new believers, as it should be in this particular day. And so we can change it right now, beginning here in this room. Already 2 declarations. You know, you beat Eastern Massachusetts, and they had a new believer too. I told you about the lady, remember? And they had 2, but the second one was after the meeting was over. You broke the record. You had 2 already during this meeting. Is there anybody here who has a Baha'i friend in Portland? Anybody? Oh, look, good. Call them up, will you, on my behalf? I suggest the local spiritual assembly, but call your friend and tell them. that Mr. Sears asked them to go to the local spiritual assembly and tell them that in San Francisco, where the master walked, and they'll tell you back, well, he walked here too, in Worcester, and he did, see? So you start even there. And tell them that you had 2 new believers during your meeting. How would they like to try for 5, right? And that'll put them on their merit up there. And now, just to show you again what the seriousness is, I'm going to ask Roseanne if she will get the 5 people to help us to show you. And she'll hand them a poster, and they're just going to walk across the front and to show you what the status is and why we want to rise up and become heroes and heroines. Hey, that's a good-looking line. I hope that's the one with the posters. These may have all volunteered to go out and start get to 9,000, you know, someplace. Yes. No, come down, stay down in front because I want to see it too, please. Just hold the sign out to the front. Just keep moving right along. Come one right behind the other with the date. Right along the edge there, please. That's it. Come, don't fall or anything dangerous like that. And yet one more. Stay there, looking to the front. There's the 3rd one. Yes, thank you very much for your kindness. A 4th one. And then 1991 we want here too. You see the years? Now turn it over and let them see the numbers. Those numbers, pitiful numbers, are the number of new believers we have made on the home front of the United States. I had the whole 10 years, but it's enough. Thank you very much. You can just give them to Richard as you go out, please, with the numbers. Now, thank you for coming up. Just passed right through. And leave that one with me. I want to frighten you with that again. You remember that we had that on Saturday. But just think in your heart, all of these wonderful things happening. Here we are, the city chosen by God to reflect to all mankind the light of the manifestation. And as the Master said in Baha'u'llah, in some ways, the light that we reflected was even greater than the power that came from the east. That's because of this great and mighty administrative order that's going to cover the planet and bring through you the kingdom of God on earth. I won't put it up on here, and then I can reach it and little myself a little later on. It's very light. I can tear it up and throw it in pieces, you know, but I won't do that. Well, but that's why, beloved friends, that it's so serious. Because of who we are and what we're going to do. We can't allow that. I started to make a comparison of our gifts from Baha'u'llah to be here in the United States, a city chosen by God, where the light will be so great and glorious it will touch the hearts as well as the eyes of the people of the world. And I'll tell you later a little bit about the charts, but the gifts are endless. I put them, I think, on the back. You know that in Rizwan, this year, we begin the Holy Year, right? Dedicated to Baha'u'llah. We can't let that happen with less than 2,000 believers to begin such a year of Baha'u'llah. He is going to be constantly throughout the year, there'll be wonderful programs about Baha'u'llah, the King of Kings, the Lord of Hosts, the Supreme Redeemer of men. There's never been another like it. He has fulfilled all the prophecies of everybody's religion because it was his destiny, filled with love for all of them. And we are going to be so filled with love and do such wonderful things, it says in the Rizwan message of the Universal House of Justice, we are going to blazon his name across the skies of the entire planet. So the name and the word Baha'u'llah will become an eminence in the minds and hearts of all the peoples of the world. And whenever they hear it, they will begin to know what it really stands for. That's going to happen starting at Rizwan. 6-year plan's going to end. Tribute to the Knights. Scroll of Honor will be put under the steps of Baha'u'llah's entrance to Baha'u'llah's shrine. And on the Day of the Covenant this year, the 26th of November, there will be 90 more auxiliary board members, or 846 in all. This institution is a living, growing thing. It will never go backwards or sideways. It will go forward, onward, and upward. The auxiliary members helping the councilors and the national assemblies to conquer the world. And in 1922, we mentioned already the 100th anniversary, the centenary of Abdu'l-Baha's naming New York as the city of the covenant. And what a time that will be for all of you at the World Congress. And the beauty and glory of Baha'u'llah's ascension will be carried throughout all the year. The prayers and the things that are used in the Holy Land, all of you, no matter what community you're in, you will receive copies of those prayers and you can participate constantly. But on and on. I suggest, if you haven't for a while, get out the Rizwan message of the House of Justice. Keep it handy. I have one on my desk all the time, and I read 2 or 3 pages over and over and haven't stopped since Rizwan. It is filled with the wonders and the glory that happen and begin at Rizwan this year. And so I want to, let's just get rid of this, I think. I've seen that long enough. Less than 2,000 believers. Never again on this planet will we ever let that happen. And that's why we have the 5 and 9 equals not 14, but 9,000. That's the number of new believers we want to end on this great note of triumph when Rizwan comes. And I'm going to be there, and we'll meet with Marguerite when the news comes, 9,000 new believers, a time of rejoicing that the sleeping giant of America had awakened at last. Well, that's the background to it. You knew that from Saturday, but I wanted just to say that. And now I think I'll, do we have one of these easels that we can put those 3 charts up on the deck? If not, maybe you'll have to get 2 people to help you so we can hold one under the other. Don't take away the guardian, though. That's good. Yeah. Marguerite and I made one at home, and we can just hook the 1, 2, 3. And it's very impressive, and that's why I wanted to try to do that, but it was too big to get in the front seat of the plane. You know, they frown at you if you carry in too much of that stuff. But anyway, I'm going to give you a brief explanation of these 3 charts. There's no time to explain them all, but you'll catch on very rapidly. This is the first of the charts, and put it someplace, even if you just set it up there. That one comes first. That's the top of the chart, right? Would you hand me my walking stick? Yes. Don't get too far away because I can't reach it otherwise. Yes, all right. The Bab, Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, the 3 central figures of the faith. Christ wrote in the sand of Caesarea Philippi. We don't know what he wrote. Muhammad dictated the Quran. The order of it was changed maybe a couple 100 years after his passing. It wasn't in the order it was given, and he dictated it. He didn't write it with his own hand. That looks interesting. You think that's going to work out all right? Yes, right. Well, the Bab wrote with his own hand. No, it goes in the top, way up at the top, right? Maybe we should go out for coffee and then come back at this. But listen to this. This is marvelous. This is marvelous. The Bab wrote with his own hand for 6 years. 6 years of written revelation. Baha'u'llah, the second manifestation of God, wrote for 40 years. You know, wonderful, magnificent things to break our hearts with rapture and excitement and tears if we told it all. But between 2 messengers of God foretold in all the holy books, there were 46 years of written revelation. And then Abdu'l-Baha came, and he told us the meanings behind and explained what the Bab and Baha'u'llah said in writing. or 75 years in writing from the three central figures of the faith. In writing. Never before in the whole history of the world. Books and books and books. Everywhere, endless number. I love to talk about all of them, but next manifestation of God would be here, you know, before I'd finished with this. And then to carry our charts further comes the next one. Get out all your screwdrivers and the things you need. Or you can, if you wish, you can hold that one there in that position. You probably better bring it out further because I don't think over here they'll see it. That's all right for now. No, I can't see it. It's all right. No, that's okay. Look, you see, beloved guardian said when he was asked about charts, he said, yes, it's perfectly all right to use charts, as long as you make it clear that it is your own limited understanding of the great theme you are portraying. Dick, will you just hold that up against the other one so they're close together and you can see the line of the chart coming down for the time being? And we'll find some holy soul to come up and help you.
He's coming right behind me.
Is he? Not that one.
Oh, okay.
Just this one. Make sure that stays there. I'm sorry, I have to move a little so I can see. But there we see the guardian, the beloved guardian. For 36 years, he told us the meaning of all of the words and the explanation of all of the details. Our real kingdom of God is not in any such danger as this one here on the right, okay. Yeah, right. So you see, that's it. Or with the guardian in the proper... think I'll go out and try to get the 9,000 believers and leave this. Just hold it there, Dick. Don't try to make it full. Just hang on to it. It'll be all right. Like that. So, 46 years of written revelation and be... I'm sorry about that, Shoghi Effendi. Just put them up and hold them. Don't try to bring in the screwdriver and all that. You take the top one, Dick. You take the next one, and just hold it and show it there. Right, see? And then the universal house of justice says in our writings, all the things which are not in the book and written in the book, they will decide. And their decision, under the power given to them by the beloved Blessed Beauty Baha'u'llah, will be equally binding upon all mankind. And then on this side we have the Hands of the Cause, the International Teaching Center, the counselors, and over under the House of Justice, the National Assembly, the local assembly on this side, the auxiliary board, and their assistants who work in both this side and in that side. And imagine what was involved in all that the beloved guardian gave us. Now I'll have some fun with this one. Just put it right down there and hold it. No, it's got to go down right. That's right there. You got it?
Yes, we got it.
All right. Isn't that wonderful? Just look at that. The beloved guardian in 70 years of the ministry that is going to last down, the Master said, through centuries and ages. Imagine what the world is beginning to look at. That's the house of worship. When it was dedicated, the Master said, that hour, 1953, at that time, about 35, 36 years ago, as you can tell I'm weak on mathematics, but in there someplace, the Master said that would mark, the dedication of this temple would mark the inception of the kingdom of God on earth that you're building and you see in your ringstone. The kingdom of God on earth. It's already started in our time, imagine that. And around it there will be home for the orphans, right? Home for the aged. There's already one that will met. Hospitals, schools, all of those are on the Hazrat al-Quds, which means the sacred fold. The sacred fold. Baha'u'llah is the Lord and the shepherd of all mankind, as Isaiah said. Feed your flock in the green pastures. Hazrat al-Quds, that's what that means. And around here it is here, HQ, Mazaratl Quds, and around that there is Assembly Hall, a publishing trust, council, chambers, secretariat, archives, library, treasury, pilgrim's house. All of these things in this incipient form, with the inception of the kingdom of God on earth, were given to us by the Master and by the beloved guardian in the first 70 years of his ministry before he left us. We can only imagine the wonder, the joy to the world in the kingdom of God on earth, what it will be like when the time comes. Because Baha'u'llah said, you know, all of this is marvelous, but Baha'u'llah said in the epistle to the Son of the Wolf, everything I have written will come to pass word for word upon the earth, word for word, and we will have it all, that kingdom of God on earth. In the meantime, under the guidance of the Universal House of Justice, which I will speak about after our intermission today, who's been empowered to do everything we need to have done on the earth until the coming of those days Baha'u'llah talked about. But isn't that something? Imagine that. I believe the beloved guardian could stand a little ovation. How about a standing ovation? Hello. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Take it away now, all of it. Okay. And set it back down here. Oh, my. You know, of course, that the 9,000 new believers from the pin are only for this Rizwan. So we will go to that Rizwan when all of these wonderful things happen on a wave of victory. So wherever you go and whatever you do, start the ball rolling. You never know where something exciting is going to happen. It's going to be on the next street. It may be in one of the parishes near you. It may be among the Asian community, the Hispanic community, the old Irish community. It may be in some small town nearby. But once it starts, something will happen, the like of which the world has never seen before. But that's just for this Rizwan. From then on, we won't never even accept 9,000, 19,000, 90,000, 100,000. There will be millions and millions of Baha'is in the United States chosen by God because of you. And before we finish here today, you will see how precious and how important you are. And whenever any one of those you're teaching signs his or her declaration card, have them get on the telephone and talk to me, and I can tell them how much I love them and how important they are in our long growing chain of new believers. Guardian said, drown your troubles, whatever they may be, in an ocean of new believers, no matter what the difficulties. I don't know, I said, I think I'm running a fever. 98.6 is normal, isn't it? Yeah. I'm running 9,000 plus over here right now. Right, yes. Well, just think, beloved friends, no one on the surface of the earth, no one has had a chance such as we have to realize the state we're in and to change all that. And we go, that is the way it is. We go from crisis to victory, and it's wonderful. As a matter of fact, 2 last chances, one on the oneness of mankind and one on this great number of new believers for the West and what it stands for. And we can change the face of human society. It may seem a little difficult for us when we're sitting here to think that those in this room can do it, but we can. And before we leave this room, I think you'll agree that we can do it. Just to keep us, you don't mind if I look in the back like that. Doesn't mean I've forgotten something. I'm just looking back there. That's pretty pale, isn't it, there? But wait till you hear what's on this side here. Yes, is that I have this pamphlet called Victory Promises. You notice North America, especially the United States of America, is red and in danger of not winning. And this was some time back, but now we're on the path, and it's going to be fun and exciting. And I wanted just to, before we had our intermission, tell you how wonderful you are from this little pamphlet. But when you come back after intermission, then the real fun starts. And we're going to hear wonderful things about our potential and our greatness. That will be wonderful. Here I have, I guess I don't need that one anymore. Let me just use this little pamphlet. In here I have messages from the Bab Baha'u'llah, Abdul-Baha, Shoghi Effendi, and the Universal House of Justice about you. Nobody else, it's about you. And there are 10 to each one, but I'm only going to read one of them. This is from the Bab about you. The blessed Bab says, verily, any one follower of this faith can, by the leave of God, prevail over all who dwell in heaven and earth. Did you hear that? You're one person, right? Imagine what's going to happen. It says in our writings that one soul on fire with the faith can illuminate an entire continent and set an entire country ablaze. So if you release yourself to the power you have, imagine what will happen. You have a greater spiritual power than all who dwell on earth. That's the Bab. Here's one from Baha'u'llah, a little different, but the same idea, a promise. It says, he that summoneth men in my name is verily of me, and he will show forth that which is beyond the power of all who dwell on earth. Yeah, next time you look in the mirror, remember those words are for you, and that's who you're looking at. That's all right, I don't mind. So when you see yourself in there, you'll know that's who you are, the power of all that dwell on earth. That was the Blessed Beauty, Baha'u'llah. This is from Abdul-Baha, another promise. It says, in this century of the latter times, Baha'u'llah has appeared, and so resurrected the spirits of all of us that they have. Yes, I see. Oh, yes, right. Let me do it all over again now in capital letters. In this century of the latter times, Baha'u'llah has appeared, and so resuscitated spirits that they have manifested powers more than human. Remember these words tomorrow when you get up and look in the mirror, you know. That's you, every one of you. And the Guardian said that all you have to do is tell your story, and it will make thousands and thousands of Baha'is. From Shoghi Effendi, oh, there's 5 or 6 in each one of these. If you don't have a copy of that, maybe you can get one from the National Assembly. Hawaii printed 20,000 of them, and then they printed one for everybody in Canada from the United States, chosen by God, and they got out there. So everybody would have this to look at. This is from the beloved Guardian. We can truly say, Shoghi Effendi says, that this cause is a cause that enables people to achieve the impossible. Isn't that wonderful? When I was in Worcester, there were some black and white youth, marvelous dancers, and they were doing the oneness of humanity. They didn't know that was my subject that night. And they said that without the power of Baha'u'llah, this would be impossible. And I thought, hey, I remembered that thing, and I got a big blank sheet of paper, and I wrote the word up there, looking at that way, impossible, right? And I said that Shoghi Effendi had taught us to realize that in our teaching that the word impossible was divided in 2 parts, the I am and the possible. And when you put an apostrophe between the I and the am, I am the ego, the self, the one who thought only of themselves and not of mankind and the people. That's what made it impossible. But if you got rid of that and you transformed yourself so you could transform the world and got rid of the I am, everything else was possible. And that's the way it is with our faith. I have to be careful. See, I get carried away. And the next manifestation of God will be here before dinner. No, it's not going to be very long today, I don't think. Gee, there's so many other nice things I should say there, but I won't. I'll come now to the universal house of justice. And it says, promise, dependence upon him, Baha'u'llah, enables the Baha'is to formulate audacious plans and confidently carry them through to completion in the face of seemingly insuperable obstacles. And the promise concludes saying, however hopeless the prospect any of us may face, Baha'u'llah will reinforce them with his hosts and will open the doors of victory before them. And in that mirror that you see there, you, all of those were meant for you, not for anybody else. Believe it. Begin to believe that you will change the world, because you will, and that day is coming very rapidly. Well, you see, that whole stack is gone, and that's the biggest one. Isn't that wonderful? It says in Baha'u'llah's writings, ye are the breeze that stirreth at the break of day, the soft flowing water upon which will depend the very life of all men, on you, the breeze that stirreth at the break of day. Because of you, Baha'u'llah said, you, his followers, the Baha'is of the world, and all those lovers of God sitting in this room together, because of you, the countenance of the earth hath been wreathed in smiles. Must certainly make you happy and filled with love to know when you get up in the morning and you look in that mirror and you smile and you say your prayers. The countenance of the whole earth, with all of its troubles and sorrows, hath been wreathed in smiles, because you are alive and living on this planet and are going to change all that and make it a new world. Well, it's time now for our intermission. We're going to have a 15-minute break, and you can fill your other bucket with pins, so you'll have plenty to give to everybody. And remember, think 9,000. That's a very limited amount we'll have and accept. Mingle with everybody, and maybe somebody there that you know and have been teaching is just reaching in for their fountain pen to sign their declarating card. And we'll go to 3 and have to phone Portland and tell them, how about 6? Who knows what's going to happen? When we come back, beloved friends, we'll hear the most exciting quotations of all about these world-redeeming, soul-saving, humanity-loving faith of ours, and about how special and how delightful and how wonderful you are. And we'll realize more closely. And if we ever learn anything, as I said last night, or Saturday afternoon, I can't remember, if we learn anything, realize who you are. And because of you, the countenance will be wreathed in smiles. And the very life of all men depends on you. And if that seems big or something to you, forget it. Just say your prayers. Things will happen you never dreamed of. Winning victories that were beyond our farthest imagination. And the next time I see you, we'll have to have our meeting in Kezar Stadium. It used to be when I broadcast football. Niners are in a new place. Candlestick, yes. Well, candlesticks won't be big enough. They'll have to put in those huge, gigantic candles. We will meet there. If I can keep on going and last long enough, we'll meet in one of these football stadiums, crammed and packed with Baha'is who are changing the face of human society. They will broadcast it on radio and television all the way to New York and to Miami and to San Diego and to Dallas, even to my little hometown of Tucson. So we're going to now, aren't we lucky to be a part of that? We have a 15-minute break, and I promise you, the best is yet to come. Thank you. I haven't said much about the Universal House of Justice so far during these days, and after the intermission, I wanted again to hold up this fantastic picture, the seat of the Universal House of Justice. You can see it all the way down from the streets of Haifa when you're there, and Very magnificent. Where did you come from?
I've been here all the time.
Right. I thought it was the Supreme Concourse I was doing. Thank you very much. You turn it for over there. Beautiful sight, isn't it? And I wanted to say something about that. Hold that one there, will you? This is the photograph of the monument of the greatest holy leaf, Baha'u'llah's sister. The one who was so pure-hearted that blessed beauty, and the Master said of her that whatever she prayed for was granted. So if you ever get in real trouble, you know where to direct a few of your prayers. You're bound to get some results. This, the beloved guardian said, is emblematic of that chart I showed you before. Far more than that. Of the world order of Baha'u'llah. The steps are the local assemblies, the pillars are the national assemblies, and the dome is the Universal House of Justice. I remember I came out one day when I was there several times ago at a World Convention, and I took some lovely pictures of this, and it was pouring out, just pouring out, and you could see how it worked, right? The rain was landing on the dome and coming down the pillars and on the steps, and out in here into the garden were all the flowers, red and blue and yellow and gold and brown. All were being nourished, and that, I thought to myself, was what we were doing for the world. And the Universal House of Justice always tries to carry out whatever they can do that they know what the beloved guardian would like to do. And they have been wonderful at it. And next time you're out there and see the dome of the Universal House of Justice, you will note how the pattern is similar to the dome of the greatest holy leaf, which the beloved guardian had said, that's the House of Justice, national assemblies, and local assemblies. So that's very wonderful. You can take those both away now. Wait, let me look at that once more. I love it. Beautiful flowers and all. And when you go there, the atmosphere is so great. But I wanted to talk a bit about this Universal House of Justice. It is so wonderful. And I wanted to start this afternoon session with a few quotations about it from the scriptures, of course. It's mentioned time and again. The house of the Lord of hosts, foretold in Scripture. Let us go, this is from Micah, let us go up to the house of the Lord of hosts. Many of these wonderful things. And here's some words from our own sacred writings of our faith about this glorious institution. Sole refuge of a tottering civilization. It is freed from all error and the source of all good. The Universal House of Justice. Here's a beautiful quotation. The mighty edifice, the Universal House of Justice, will be erected, raising high its noble frame above the world of existence. The unity of the followers of Baha'u'llah will thus be realized and fulfilled from one end of the earth to the other. And the living waters of everlasting life will stream forth from that fountainhead of God's world order to wash away the evils and the iniquities of the realm of dust and heal man's age-old ills and ailments. It's a promise for our House of Justice. I have another one on the other side here too, short quotation. When the Universal House of Justice shall have stepped forth from the realm of hope into that of visible fulfillment, and its fame be established in every corner and clime of the world, then that august institution, founded and grounded on the entire Baha'i community of East and West, and the recipient of the bounties of God and his divine inspiration, that Universal House of Justice will proceed to devise and carry out important undertakings, worldwide activities, and the establishment of glorious institutions By this means, the renown of the Baha'i faith in the cause of God will illumine the whole world. Isn't that beautiful? And of course, many of those world undertakings are already done, and glorious institutions. The Baha'i faith, sole hope of the world, is the sole hope of the world, and you are the instruments of God who will use these powers to safeguard all humanity. And your life will be not for one color, but for all colors, not for one nation, but for all nations, not for one religion, but for all religions. You will be emblematic of the kingdom of God on earth that Christ talked about. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, just like it shows in our ringstone. And Abdul-Baha said that beautiful prayer of Christ's was not only a prayer, but a prophecy. So we've seen those things. You know, I wanted to tell you about Abdul-Baha and the people of the world. When the Turkish forces, under the Turkish commander Jamal Pasha, who was quite a fierce and ruthless leader, when they were coming to the battle in the Holy Land, General Allenby was in charge of all the Allied forces, and he was in Egypt. And when Jamal Pasha said that before he left the Holy Land, he would crucify Abdul-Baha to the gates of Akka, or hang him on the gallows, or cast him into the sea, or exile him to Tripolitania in Africa. And the Baha'is everywhere became very alarmed, and they called to their friends in England, because Allenby, General Allenby, was in charge of those forces about to go into the Holy Land. And they contacted Lord Lamington and Winston Churchill, the Foreign Office, and told them the importance of Abdul-Baha, and to try to get a message to Allenby to do all he could to protect the beloved master when he entered the Holy Land. But Allenby knew very well who the master was, as did those in the Foreign Office. And Allenby went into the Holy Land ahead of time, surprised Jamal Pasha, drove him out of the Holy Land, but never did all the terrible things to him that he planned to do to the beloved master. But this, you'll find all of this in God Passes By, this story, except this little part. While I was researching it, I found out about some of the terrors that went through the Arab community at the time of Allenby's sudden and surprise entry, because of his name, General Allenby. Allenby. In Arabic, it was like divided in two words. Allah Nebi, God's prophet. And he was the one who was the head of all of these Allied forces and terrified them. They knew they had no chance, they felt. And Jamal Pasha fled. And Allenby came in, conquered it, put a secure guard around the beloved master's house, sent the two messages, one to the British military forces of the Allied armies everywhere, telling them he had conquered the Palestine. And the second message that went out to the world from Allenby was to tell the world that Abdul-Baha was safe, as he was. Those were thrilling and exciting days, really. Abdul-Baha wished to make it clear to the friends about the Universal House of Justice and their importance and significance and greatness, and they were discussing it. And Abdul-Baha told the friends who were with, this was not at the wartime at all, long after, he was talking to them about, as many friends did after the passing of Shoghi Effendi, and they said to themselves, well, who now will call for the election of the Universal House of Justice? And it was made clear, you'll find all of this in Wellspring of Guidance, that there is nothing in our writings at all that says that the beloved guardian had to call for the election of the Universal House of Justice. Whenever, as the Master had said early on when he was talking with the friends, whatever number of National Assemblies existed, it didn't have to be all in the world. Whatever their number was, they would call for the election of the Universal House of Justice, according to the steps given in our writings. And when they did, that Universal House of Justice would be the House of Justice, the house of the Lord of Hosts, foretold by Baha'u'llah. And Abdul-Baha was educating and telling the friends that, how important that House of Justice was. And he said to them, if the House of Justice had been operating in that day, his day, just at that time, he, Abdul-Baha, he said, would be the first to bow down in obedience before them, even if their decision were against him. Well, this shocked a lot of the friends. They couldn't believe that. They said, is the House of Justice of God, or is it not? It is, the Master said. Is the beloved Master, the mystery of God, the center of his covenant? Is he of God, or is he not? He is, Abdul-Baha said. Well, they said, then how could one holy and spiritual instrument of God make a decision against another? And Abdul-Baha smiled and said that the only reason he told them things, they had missed the point, was to let them know that the Universal House of Justice is, was, and would be supreme over all of these things, no matter when they came into being. It was not something conditioned by anything else in the world. And that was the way he would show his respect for it. And the world would. No matter what they did, it would be the action that had been given to them and the power given to them by Baha'u'llah. And that's a wonderful thing. So whenever you know we received a message from the men of the House of Justice on the side of Mount Carmel, that body is the supreme body of our faith in these days. Whatever it does will be an action in majority vote that will carry the work of the faith forward, and nothing can stop it. That's why all of these things they're doing, like the transformation and all the things they've had in their Rizwan messages, why they are so wonderful, because it is the Word of God for all mankind. And Baha'u'llah made it clear in the epistle to the Son of the Wolf. You can read it for yourself. He said that every word he had written about the oneness of mankind in the kingdom of God on earth, every word he had written would come to pass, word for word upon the earth. Nothing could stop it. But in these days, in between time, with the difficulties of the world, the House of Justice had the power adequate to resolve every problem, no matter what it was, that they alone could unify the world and carry out all the things I've been telling you about, how you will change the face of the world. But that the time will come when Baha'u'llah's promise of every word of his will come to pass, word for word upon the earth. And then we will see the whole thing, and we'll have it all, the kingdom of God on earth, with Baha'u'llah and the institutions of the faith and the great world order you've seen the beginnings of already, and the Universal House of Justice to go on forever. So that's wonderful. Religions in the past had no built-in securities like that, and when their founders died and passed away, and the other members of various institutions lost their power, they were still beautiful, they were divine, and for their age, they were the truth, just like all the religions were. And we would be nowhere without them. We loved them, and we built upon them, as Abul Qasim Faizi, hand of the cause, said, we have stood upon their shoulders. No one has a greater love for them. In all the things we do, almost all, or a great share of all those things, came from Moses and from Buddha and from Christ and Krishna and Zoroaster. No one could love them more. But they didn't have the built-in safeguard such as we had. And it was made clear that we were given the Universal House of Justice, so none of the great powers of our faith would ever vanish or disappear from the earth. And that's why we move ahead and go forward with such confidence and such delight. The universal house of justice can deal with any of the problems, any of the world's pressures and troubles, until the time comes when we'll see the whole kingdom of God on earth. Now we're racing toward our close, all about the majesty and the greatness of each one of you. This is your shining hour, when you will arise not only to think 9,000, that's just the beginning, but to set your village, your town, and city on fire with new believers, until we have the 9,000 well before Rizwan. And now I want to talk to you about a lady, wonderful lady teacher, matchless. And you know her name very well, because she came right from this very area. And I knew her and served with her on committees and institutions. Her name was Ella Bailey. Wonderful woman, tiny little Irish lady. I used to say to her, Ella, don't go out in the wind today with your umbrella, or it'll blow you out of the San Francisco Bay. And we can't afford to lose you, you know. But she wanted to go back and see the master when she heard he was at Chicago, and she had a room for herself in the women's club. And as she got more elderly and had less resources, she couldn't do all the things she wanted to do. But she was in Wilmette when the beloved master was there, and told her how she would suffer and the difficulties she would have, but she would win wonderful victories. She was there at Wilmette when there was nothing but dust, the place where that house of worship would rise up, the holiest house of worship ever to be raised to the name of Baha'u'llah. You see, she was quite upset when nobody was contributing to the building of the temple the way, because she'd seen nothing but dirt there, but she could envision it, holiest house of worship that would ever be raised to the name of Baha'u'llah. And then they started building, and it was going very slowly. And the Guardian had that special edition of the Dawnbreakers made, and signed 150 copies with his name, to start to raise some funds to show the friends the significance and importance of it. Now we have houses of worship around the world, and we know what it means. But in those days, they weren't getting any money. And Ella Bailey, we didn't find out till later, Mr. Iowes was in the Holy Land when I was there, had been the treasurer of the USA. And after the Guardian had said goodnight, we went up and looked out the window at the illumined shrine of the Bob. And he asked me if I remembered Ella Bailey, and I told him, of course, and how much I lived her, and I had served with her in California. And he said, you know that story I told, that he had told the story that started the flow of contributions. This little lady, he didn't give her name then, had saved $1,000 to bury herself. But she thought she's a small lady, right? And she doesn't need a big stone. So she said, of the $1,000, I'm sending you half, $500 for the stone that Baha'u'llah wants raised up in the heart of America. So here it is, she sent the $500. Nothing much happened. And so she wrote again. He's telling us this after we've left the Guardian's table looking at the shrine. And he told us that her name was Ella Bailey, and that the letter came and said that she was distressed that there wasn't more action coming. And she felt that she wasn't so important that she needed the other $500. I mean, she was a little lady, a good planter, and not much. And anyway, Ella Bailey, who's that? She said. Somebody comes and sees the stone Ella Bailey, to say, who's that? She didn't mean anything to anybody. So she'd thought it over, and she said that one of the things I can do in my life is to make the contribution of the rest of my $1,000. So I'm sending you the other 500. And if it is the will of God, let them bury me in a potter's field, unknown. Well, she went to the Holy Land, as you know, still had a little bit of the pension she could get there. She says, it doesn't matter, I'm never coming back. And so she went with the Gulicks to Africa. And I was there at the table when the Guardian had sent for a design. He wanted a design above her head, and it came to him, and he, the sign of God on earth, and grandson of the Blessed Beauty of Abdu'l-Baha, and the great-grandson of Baha'u'llah, and a descendant of the Bab, both of the prophets of God. He was the one who was designing the monument that would rest above her head in Tripoli. And he said that he wished to have the privilege of paying for the stone himself. And I was at that table hearing this, and I thought if only he would say 3 words about me that he said about this wonderful lady and her significance and her importance, and that she deserved. You read the cable in the in memoriam, I'm sure. If not, read it again. But he said that she deserved to rank in the galaxy of the immortal women of the faith. Keith Ransom Kaler, Mae Maxwell, and all the others that you know so well, for what she had done. And then he said, I had remembered some of the friends said to me here in the USA, wasn't that too bad about Ella Bailey Bill? I mean, it's all right to be heroic, but you have to use good judgment. I mean, 88 with all those ills, hardly any resources. She wanted to go pioneer and wouldn't give it up. Too bad. And I'm seated across from the grandson of Abdu'l-Baha, descendant of the Bab, relative of the King of Kings, the Lord of Hosts, Supreme Redeemer of men, Baha'u'llah, and he's talking about her. And he said to me, well, to the others, the whole table, I was just there drinking in every word, and he said, you know, she died there before she had a chance to teach anything. And I remembered what these people said. Wasn't that a shame for her to go there and take all that suffering and never teach anybody? At least she had a phone at home. She could have done something. But the Shoghi Effendi, the sign of God on earth, working and showing us the monument they are planning for as a headstone for the place in Tripoli, Africa, said, you know, she never anybody. But her name will teach boundaries who never thought about what